There was recently an online conversation around the topic of who's leading the discussion about where contemporary photography is going. And the example of Zarkovsky's shows in the 60s and 70s was brought up as somebody who was taking chances on fairly unknown artists. I'm thinking of, the New Documents and then the Eggleston and the Shore shows at MoMA. And he basically bet everything he had on people who nobody knew anything about, or only very few insiders, and who were doing a kind of photography that wasn't being done at the time. And the question, of course, the main question of this conversation was, well, who's doing that now? Be it curators, editors, online bloggers, or whatever. Who are the people who you can point at and say, all right, when that guy, puts his money down, I'm going to pay attention to what he's putting it on, because he's obviously taking a risk about what the future is. And I'm curious how you see your work as curators in terms of that broader conversation.
Oh, I worked for John Cherkowski, and I knew him very well, and so I'm completely prejudiced. He's a hero for me. But you have to understand, when you talk about he chose Winogrand, Arbus, and Friedlander. Let's just stop there. And they were unknown. You're implying that there are artists that were known. I mean, there wasn't even there was no market when in New Documents in 1967, they each found out that somebody wanted to buy a picture by each of them, and the three of them got together. They wanted to charge the same thing, and they all decided, okay, $25 a piece. And then they found out that the person who wanted to buy the pictures was a guard in the museum. So it was a totally different world. And also, I have to say, I agree with you. If you're talking about the new photography of the 60s, there were a lot of new things. There were things that Cherkowski ignored, but it's awfully hard to do better than Arbus, Winogrand, and Friedlander for important new photography of the 60s. So, but remember, he didn't have any competition. There weren't a lot of other photography programs, a lot of other places who were doing things. So, is that making sense to you all? That you understand, this guy's a hero for me, and I think he did the right things, but it's not like if he hadn't done Arbus, Winogrand, and Friedlander right away, somebody else was going to do it. Now, they are. and all kinds of other things, too. So the idea of being a heroic pioneer and discovering this person and that person is much less of an issue, it seems to me, now than it used to be.
The only thing that I want to add, and I agree completely with you, is that the possibility that now we can maybe write the history of photography from different perspective, from the perspective of different countries and the different political context and social context. And it's true that during the 60s, 70s, and beginning of 80s, the history of photography that we know, and also because it was very important and very strong, it's mainly through the acts of the history of photography in the United States. Now, since we have a lot of museums in Europe and also here and everywhere, I think that it's time to rewrite in a kind of peripheral way this history of photography, and discover that there are still a lot of photographers unknown in a lot of countries.
I agree with that too. But there's another thing I want to add, though, from my point of view. I appreciate I got involved in the photography world when basically still nothing was worth anything, and there was no market to speak of. And I appreciate having those roots, because I'll tell you today that still whether an artist is has a show with a gallery or gallery X or gallery Y or no gallery at all, doesn't matter to me at all. And I'm sure it doesn't matter to Marta either. It's not a... but it's again, it's a little bit like the market price. If the artist you're interested in showing and collecting has shown at a lot of other places and the pictures are very expensive, then you have to deal with that. But or if the artist has not shown a lot of other places and the works are not expensive, then you deal with that. But it doesn't mean that the artistic value of the work has any difference whatsoever. In a sense, for Tchaikovsky, it was easier because nothing was worth anything and nothing was shown anywhere else.
Okay.
And the artist came to him. Because there were no galleries, that was the only way. The artist came to him.